You think betrayal is something that happens to other people, to kings, to generals, to names carved in stone. But let me ask you something. How many times has someone smiled at you while quietly sharpening a knife behind your back? How many times have you noticed the small warning signs, felt that tightening in your chest, and still chosen to ignore it because the truth was too painful to see? History repeats for one reason. Human nature doesn't evolve as fast as our illusions. We build stories about loyalty, about love, about honor, and then we're shocked when people don't behave according to the script in our heads. Betrayal is not a glitch in the system. It is part of the system. It is what happens when fear, envy, ego, and shadow take the wheel. In this journey, you're going to step inside 5 betrayals so ruthless and so human that you will never look at loyalty the same way again. Not to make you paranoid, not to turn you into a cynic, but to prepare you. If you can understand how empires fell, you can understand how relationships collapse, how friendships rot from the inside, how trust dies slowly long before the final wound. Because the real betrayal almost never begins with the knife. It begins with a story someone tells themselves to justify what they are about to do to you. Welcome to the Iron Protocol, where we decode the dark side of human nature so you can defend yourself against it. Let's begin with a scene you think you know. Rome, 44 BCE. The air is heavy with dust and murmuring voices. Julius Caesar walks into the Senate, wrapped in a purple-trimmed toga, the most powerful man in the Roman world. To him, this is just another day among colleagues. Men he has promoted, forgiven, fed, rescued from ruin. Men who owe their careers, their fortunes, even their lives to his choices. He believes he is surrounded by allies. He isn't. As he takes his seat, they close in. A hand tugs his toga down from his neck. For a heartbeat, it feels like a clumsy appeal, some desperate attempt to get his attention. Then the first blade goes in. Shock, heat, noise. The pain is less shocking than the faces. He looks from one assassin to another and sees not strangers, but familiar eyes, friends, beneficiaries. Finally, he sees Brutus, the young man he trusted, protected, maybe even loved like a son. According to the legend, that is when he stops resisting. It is not the steel that breaks him. It is the realization, even you. This is betrayal in its purest form. Not an attack from an enemy, but a rupture from someone close enough to know exactly where to strike. The conspirators claimed noble motives. They said they were saving the Republic, defending freedom, stopping a tyrant. That is what dark psychology always does. It dresses raw emotion in sophisticated language. Underneath the speeches lived something far more primitive. Envy, status panic, a deep, animal fear of becoming irrelevant. Caesar's success threw a harsh light on their own fading influence. Every honor he received felt like a wound to their ego. His rise meant their decline. When your identity is built on power, another person's greatness can feel like a personal insult. So the mind searches for a story that allows you to hurt them while still seeing yourself as the hero. He is a tyrant. We are liberators. Once that story hardens, the knife no longer feels like murder. It feels like justice. From a Jungian angle, the senators were projecting their shadow onto Caesar. The impulses they could not accept in themselves, the hunger for domination, the willingness to break rules, the fantasy of total control were easier to see in him than in their own hearts. By killing him, they were trying to kill the thing they feared inside themselves. But the shadow does not die when you attack another person. It simply finds a new mask. Caesar, on the other hand, made a different mistake. He underestimated the power of envy. He overestimated the power of gratitude. He assumed that favors, Mercy and shared history would protect him from the darkest parts of human nature. A Stoic would call that a dangerous illusion. The Stoic does not hate people, but he does not worship them either. He expects human nature, not fantasy. He trusts actions over words, patterns over promises. He knows that loyalty is real, but never guaranteed. You may not be walking into a Senate chamber, but the pattern is the same. Think of the co-worker who smiles at your promotion but starts undermining you in private. Think of the friend who suddenly finds a moral reason to criticize you right after your life begins to improve. Think of the business partner who insists you owe them because of past favors, even as they chip away at your boundaries. On the surface, I'm just being honest. I just care about what's right. Underneath, your success makes me feel small. Your independence makes me feel expendable. The Stoic response is not paranoia. It is lucid trust. Respect people. Appreciate them. But never build your safety on the assumption that anyone is above envy. And never ignore the small signs that someone's admiration has quietly turned into resentment. Now leave Rome and step into another kingdom, another quiet room where the same forces operate in different clothing. England, 1483. King Edward IV is dead. His 12-year-old son, Edward, is the rightful heir. His younger brother, Richard, is a child too. Two boys born into power. They are too young to understand. Their uncle, Richard of Gloucester, steps forward as their protector. He presents himself as the loyal guardian of the realm, the man who will guide them until the older boy can wear the crown. At first, it looks like a story of duty. The boys are brought to London. They appear in public. Then they are moved into the Tower of London, officially for their safety before the coronation. Guards change. Access narrows. Appearances grow less frequent. And then, suddenly, they stop appearing at all. No formal announcement. No public mourning. Just absence. Two children vanish into stone walls, and their uncle soon takes the throne as Richard III. We do not know with absolute certainty what happened to the princes, but psychologically, the lines are clear. This is what happens when fear and ambition outweigh blood. We like to imagine that family is a shield against betrayal, that shared DNA automatically produces deep loyalty. History says otherwise. When someone's status, security, or identity feels threatened by their own relatives, the mind can do something horrifyingly simple. It stops seeing them as children, siblings, cousins. It starts seeing them as obstacles. Dark psychology often begins with dehumanization. Before someone can betray you, they have to mentally shrink you. You become a problem, a threat, a complication, an issue that needs to be handled. Once that shift happens, almost anything becomes justifiable. Richard could claim he was protecting the kingdom from instability, or that questions about their legitimacy made their removal necessary. Notice the pattern. The self is always innocent. Necessity always demands the betrayal. From the Jungian perspective, Richard's shadow was loaded with insecurity. His sense of self was fused with the idea of being the one who holds power. The role swallowed the person. When you identify completely with a position, king, leader, provider, favorite child, any threat to that position feels like a threat to your very existence. The princes were not just nephews in his shadowed mind. They were living symbols of a future in which he would fade. And the shadow would rather commit a monstrous act than accept fading with grace. You do not need a crown for this pattern to appear. You can see it when a sibling sabotages another's opportunity because they fear becoming the disappointing one in the family. You can see it when a parent undercuts their own child's confidence because the child's success makes them confront their unrealized dreams. You can see it when relatives close ranks to protect the image of the family while sacrificing the well-being of one member. The language is always soft. We're just trying to keep the peace. Don't make trouble. Think of the family, but the outcome is the same. The individual is offered up so the group can keep avoiding its own shadow. What does this mean for you? It means you cannot assume that family roles guarantee safety. A Stoic respects the roles of father, mother, sibling, uncle, but does not go blind because of them. He asks, what do their actions show over time? How do they behave when money is involved, when inheritance is at stake, when attention or power shifts from them to someone else? If you see patterns of quiet sabotage, controlling behavior, repeated manipulations, do not explain it away just because they are family. Blood can be a bond, but it can also be a tool. The Stoic defends his inner dignity even inside the house he grew up in. Now leave palaces and towers and walk into the mud and smoke of medieval France. The early 15th century, the country is fractured by war. Cities have been burned, people starved, territory lost. Into this chaos steps a teenage peasant girl from Domremy, claiming that divine voices are guiding her. Joan of Arc cuts her hair, puts on armor, and rides to battle. Somehow, against all expectations, she wins. She lifts the siege of Orléans, inspires demoralized troops, and clears the path for the Dauphin to be crowned King Charles VII. You would think that saving a kingdom would secure unshakable protection, but politics does not work like a fairy tale. After some failed attempts to retake Paris, the winds of power begin to shift. Joan is captured by Allied forces and handed over to her enemies, the English. She is put on trial for heresy, for cross-dressing, for claiming direct guidance from God. And the king whose crown she helped secure, he does almost nothing. There is no daring rescue, no high-level pressure, no dramatic intervention. She stands alone, 19 years old, surrounded by hostile judges. In the end, Joan of Arc is burned at the stake while the man she made king watches from a safe distance, insulated by silence. This is another face of betrayal, not the knife, but the step backward. Not active violence, but strategic absence. Many people will stand beside you as long as it costs them nothing. They will praise your courage, benefit from your efforts, and happily be associated with your victories. But when standing with you becomes risky, when defending you could endanger their position, they quietly move away and convince themselves they had no choice. Dark Psychology explains this as self-preservation cloaked in rationalization. It would be too dangerous. My hands are tied. There's nothing I can do. These sentences are often less about reality and more about avoiding the discomfort of acting with courage. Throwing someone else to the wolves is one of the oldest tricks of the powerful. It sends a message. This is what happens to those who step outside their assigned place. On a Jungian level, Joan's existence threatened the shadow of powerful men. Her courage exposed their cowardice. Her visions exposed their lack of real conviction. Her influence over soldiers exposed how fragile their own authority really was. The shadow hates being exposed. One way to silence that discomfort is to eliminate the person who triggers it and then dress their elimination in moral or legal language. Joan didn't just die because her enemies hated her. She died because her existence made her allies uncomfortable. You can see softer versions of this pattern anytime a truth teller is quietly pushed out of a group. The co-worker who questions unethical practices and suddenly finds themselves isolated. The friend who breaks the unspoken rules of a toxic circle and becomes the problem. The family member who names the abuse everyone else has normalized and is labeled dramatic, ungrateful, unstable. Courage shines a light that many people do not want to stand in. Rather than change, they push the source of light away. What can a Stoic learn from this brutality? First, that you cannot build your sense of worth on other people's willingness to stand by you. Their courage is outside your control. Your own is not. There will be moments in your life when you do the right thing and are punished for it. When you speak the truth and watch people who claim to care fall suspiciously quiet. The temptation is to become bitter, to swear never to care again, to let betrayal turn you into a smaller, colder version of yourself. The Stoic alternative is to commit even more fiercely to acting from principle precisely because outer rewards are unstable. You measure yourself not by how many people stood with you, but by whether you stood with yourself. Now we jump forward in time, into the steel and gasoline of the 20th century. 1939. Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union sign a non-aggression pact. On the surface, it looks impossible. Two regimes that hate and distrust each other, promising not to attack. Cameras capture handshakes. Newspapers print words like agreement, cooperation, peace. Behind the scenes, they carve Eastern Europe into spheres of influence like thieves sharing loot. For a while, the pact holds. Trade flows. Resources move. Stalin allows himself to believe he has bought time, outmaneuvered Hitler, secured his borders. He receives warnings from spies and generals that Germany is preparing an invasion. He dismisses many of them as exaggerations or provocations. Admitting the truth would mean admitting that he had misjudged, that his calculations were wrong, that he was not the master strategist he believed himself to be. Then, at dawn on June 22nd, 1941, Operation Barbarossa begins. German forces launch one of the largest invasions in history. Tanks roll, planes scream overhead, millions of soldiers cross the border. The pact shatters in an instant. What looked like partnership was always a weapon. Here, betrayal happens on the scale of nations, but the psychology is painfully familiar. On Germany's side, the pact was never about loyalty. It was a temporary tool, a way to gain time, secure resources, and strike from a position of strength. On the Soviet side, the betrayal was made easier by self-deception. Stalin wanted the pact to be real, so he filtered reality to protect that desire. We all do this in smaller ways. We cling to promises because they make us feel safe and ignore the evidence that contradicts them. Dark psychology calls this willful blindness. You may have experienced it in relationships or work. The late-night messages hidden from you. The invoices that don't quite add up. The stories that don't match the facts. A part of you knows something is wrong, but another part whispers, don't look too closely. If you see it clearly, you might have to act. So you betray yourself first, by silencing your own awareness, long before anyone betrays you. From a Jungian perspective, Stalin's shadow was filled with hubris. He needed to see himself as exceptional, as someone too clever to be fooled. That need made him vulnerable. The shadow often sets the trap and then walks straight into it. When your identity depends on being right, you will ignore any evidence that suggests you are wrong, even if that evidence could save you. The same pattern plays out when someone refuses to see their partner's cheating, their boss's exploitation, or their friend's manipulation because admitting it would shatter their image of themselves as someone who has everything under control. The Stoic defense here is ruthless honesty. You must train yourself to prefer uncomfortable truth over comforting lies. Hope is not a strategy. The universe does not enforce promises. People change. Circumstances shift. Alliances break. A Stoic does not respond to that by becoming paranoid. He responds by keeping his eyes open. He watches patterns. He listens to warnings. He is willing to see what he does not want to see, because he knows that refusing to look is the first link in the chain of his own destruction. Finally, we arrive at a quieter battlefield, the inside of a single man, late 18th century America. Benedict Arnold is a hero of the Revolutionary War. He has fought bravely, been wounded, taken risks that others avoided. He has tasted glory. But over time, frustration grows. He feels overlooked, underappreciated, slighted. Promotions come late, if at all. Others receive more praise. Old financial problems loom in the background. Every delay, every criticism, every missed opportunity becomes, in his mind, another piece of evidence in a story. They don't value me. They are ungrateful. I deserve more. Resentment, once it takes root, has a specific psychology. It replays past slights in high definition. It edits out the moments of fairness and focuses only on injustice. It moves you, step by step, from disappointment to bitterness to a hunger for revenge. Eventually, Arnold makes contact with the British and agrees to surrender the American fort at West Point for money and position. The plot is discovered at the last moment. He flees into British lines and spends the rest of his life as a man without a real home, distrusted by those he betrayed and never fully embraced by those he tried to join. What happened inside him is not unique. Before he betrayed his country, he betrayed something more important, his own values. He allowed his sense of honor to be gradually replaced by a sense of grievance. He chose to let his ego, not his principles, decide his actions. Jung would say that Arnold had an inflated self-image that reality could not sustain. Instead of adjusting the image, he chose to attack the reality. When someone sees themselves as a great man unrecognized, every failure of recognition becomes proof of injustice, rather than a prompt for self-examination. You can see this same inner collapse in ordinary life. The employee who once cared about doing good work but slowly starts cutting corners because they don't pay me enough anyway. The partner who once valued loyalty but begins to justify cheating because I'm not appreciated here. The friend who starts leaking your secrets after convincing themselves that you deserve it for some perceived slight. Before every outward betrayal, there is a long list of small inner concessions where someone chose resentment over responsibility. The Stoic approach to this inner battlefield is clear. You do not control whether the world recognizes you. You do not control whether people appreciate you, praise you, reward you. What you control is whether you act according to your standards even when no one is clapping. A Stoic asks, if no one ever thanked me, if no one ever wrote my name in a book, would I still consider this worth doing? If the answer is no, then you are negotiating your integrity for applause. And that is the first step toward betraying yourself and others in the moment when bitterness outweighs conscience. So what do all these stories reveal when you look at them together? A dictator stabbed by friends, two young princes disappearing into a stone fortress, a teenage girl abandoned to the flames by the king she saved, a pact shattered by tanks at dawn, a war hero who turns his skill against his own cause. Different centuries, different cultures, different stakes. The same human patterns repeated: envy, fear, self-deception, fragile ego, projection, cowardice, abandonment, self-betrayal. The dark side of human nature is not an external monster. It is a set of tendencies inside each person, including you. Under pressure, we justify what we never thought we would do. We protect our status at the expense of our values. We ignore truths that hurt. We tell ourselves stories to avoid seeing our own shadow. If you pretend these forces only live in bad people, you are defenseless against them, both in others and in yourself. But here is what most people miss. You are not powerless in front of this darkness. You cannot control whether betrayal exists. You cannot guarantee that no one will ever lie to you, abandon you, or turn against you. You cannot completely erase your own impulses toward envy or resentment. What you can do is train how much of this darkness lives through you and how skillfully you navigate it in others. The Stoic path is not about never being hurt. It is about not being destroyed from the inside when hurt comes. It is about refusing to become the thing that wounded you. Practically, That means choosing clear seeing over fantasy, boundaries over blind trust, self-respect over desperate attachment, principle over momentary advantage. It means watching the small acts of self-betrayal in your own life, the white lies, the ignored red flags, the promises to yourself that you quietly break, because those are rehearsals for bigger betrayals later. If you want to take this further, don't just nod along and move on to the next video. Take a few minutes after this ends. Sit with a pen and paper and ask yourself 3 hard questions. Where in my life am I ignoring evidence because the truth would force me to change something I don't want to change? In what relationship am I relying on fantasy instead of patterns? And what is one promise to myself I keep postponing so consistently that it has already become a form of self-betrayal? You may not be a king, a general, or a revolutionary, but you are the ruler of something far more intimate, your own character. The history you are writing is not on a grand stage. It is in how you respond when you are slighted, when you are tempted, when you are afraid, when you are offered the chance to gain something by betraying yourself or someone else. If that's the path you want, to see clearly, to act with discipline, to build a mind that cannot be easily manipulated and a character that cannot be cheaply bought, then you are in the right place. This is the Iron Protocol, a channel for people who refuse to be naive, who refuse to be controlled, and who refuse to betray themselves ever again. If you found value in this lesson, subscribe and continue decoding the dark side of human nature and building the Stoic strength to rise above it. Your training doesn't end here. It starts here.